On this Wednesday night, the race to extinguish Nova Scotia's flames. The Premier's pleas, the Halifax Mayor's blunt message.
It would be nice in a time of crisis if we could have a no stupid policy.
And why this year's Canadian wildfire season started early. A school field trip takes a terrible turn.
Could have been so much worse.
The accident that sent more than a dozen children to a Winnipeg hospital. Troubling trend, why more kids are getting the wrong dosage of their medications. And home away from home for sailors.
I've never deployed, having kids.
The struggles at sea and the Navy's new recruiting offer with no strings attached.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Neetu Garcha.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. In Nova Scotia tonight, raging wildfires are all-consuming. Thousands of people have been forced to flee and some won't have homes to come back to. The number of people facing that devastating reality could grow. In some areas, the volatile flames are expected to spread. There are 14 fires burning in Nova Scotia. 3 are out of control. The Premier says his province needs help and there's no time to lose.
We don't know all of the resources that the federal government has at their disposal, but they do. So now isn't the time to wait and see, wait for Nova Scotia to ask this specific question or this specific. No, this is not the time for that. It's time to pitch in with whatever you have.
About 3 hours south of Halifax, this bridge on Port Clyde Road collapsed after it was damaged in the Shelburne County fire. That blaze is now more than 20,000 hectares, making it the largest in Nova Scotia's history. And just about 30 minutes outside of Halifax, the fire burning in Upper Tantallon has grown to 837 hectares. There's been widespread destruction with at least 150 homes lost. Firefighters are working grueling hours on the ground and in the air, trying to protect whatever they can. Mike Armstrong has our top story tonight from Upper Tantallon, just west of downtown Halifax.
Even from the air and even for experienced pilots, fighting this fire has been emotional. Speaking to some of the people at the controls, they've had moments where they choked up, looking down at homes that have been destroyed.
There's a level of randomness.
The deputy fire chief felt some of the same emotions after driving Wednesday morning through the evacuation zone and devastation.
It's a sight of tragedy. It's terrible to see. There's, these are people's homes. This is a community.
Some members of that community are being allowed in. Police are leading small convoys, 2 or 3 cars for people who left behind medication or a pet. Victoria Rockwell was trying to get home to pick up a cat. Her dog is in her back seat, in the trunk some of her most precious mementos, things she grabbed in frantic minutes Sunday on her way out the door.
I just went upstairs and just took a bunch, and I had some pictures of my mom. These are my wedding photos, like my husband and I.
Now, the wider community has been helpful. There have been so many donations of things like toys and clothes, they've asked people to stop for now. But accommodations are a challenge for some. Lindsay Doyle's family of 4 has slept in 3 different places in 3 nights. They've stopped unpacking.
It's hard to put words to it. We're kind of on autopilot right now and feeling a little bit numb.
And it just sucks to know that other people have lost their house.
You think about that a lot?
Yeah.
As the battle to put out the fire continues, the province and the city are hoping to avoid more. There's a ban on all activities in forests, and even wooded parks are now off limits. There have been small fires started by carelessness. Halifax police tweeted a warning Wednesday reminding people not to throw lit cigarette butts out of vehicles.
It would be nice in a time of crisis if we could have a no stupid policy, but unfortunately that doesn't really exist. That's why you have laws.
One thing everyone here is watching is the forecast. There's the immediate concern, the heat and the wind that might affect the fire, and then there's the question of when relief might come. There is rain in the forecast Friday night. That's supposed to last for about 5 days. Neetu, that is very welcome news here.
That would definitely be welcome news. Mike Armstrong in Upper Tantallon, Nova Scotia. Thanks, Mike. Hot and dry weather across the country means the fire season started early. Residents of Bocabec, New Brunswick are taking stock of the damage after they were allowed to return home, while residents of Fort Gibraltar had to flee last night with little notice. And the hottest months of the Canadian summer are still coming. Eric Sorensen reports on the fires burning across the country and why things seem to be getting worse.
The destruction from wildfires is happening swiftly from the Northwest Territories to southwestern Nova Scotia. In northern Alberta, hundreds of residents of Fort Gibraltar were forced to evacuate with little notice from their isolated community. Some have begun arriving in Edmonton. A hot, dry spring from Western Canada to the East Coast has seen more than 2 million hectares burned so far this year, 10 times more than average. In southwestern New Brunswick, fires have swept in and destroyed properties. One blaze encircled but didn't damage Judy Johnson's home.
I had no idea how bad the situation was until I actually had a friend come and they went, all she could say was, "My God, your house is still there."
Wildfires can vary from year to year, but what stands out is how early all of this is happening. Look how few fires were burning this time last year. The fire danger was low to moderate, the blues and the greens over much of the country. This year, the fire danger is high to extreme, the yellows and oranges and reds over much more of the country. And the number of fires burning, about 100 or so are contained, but dozens are out of control. And remember, this is only May.
We haven't even made it to June, and June, July, August are only going to get hotter and have higher chance of fire danger building across the country, from coast to coast to coast, quite literally.
The trends are evident. In 2013, the 10-year average by the third week of May, 61,000 hectares burned annually. Over the last 10 years, by the third week of May, an average 157,000 hectares have burned across the country. More dryness, more heat, and that will bring more lightning, sparking even more fires. From individual homeowners to land use planners at every level of government, Canadians will have to adapt.
Using our best knowledge to figure out how do we create defensible space around our homes and communities is critical because we already are burning down neighborhoods.
Climatologists point out that this is an El Nino year, with warm Pacific currents that, if anything, will make Western Canada and the Western U.S. even hotter and more prone to fires later this summer. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
In Winnipeg, a grade 5 field trip to a popular historic site turned into a nightmare. 17 children and 1 adult were taken to hospital after a platform they were on, nearly 20 feet above the ground, collapsed. Melissa Ridgen reports.
A day intended to educate and offer adventure was never supposed to end here, in panic at the Winnipeg Children's Hospital, as parents rushed to their children after getting a terrible call.
And as a parent, I couldn't resist to stay home.
Arcana Paul's son was one of the students, most 10 or 11 years old, visiting Fort Gibraltar, a local historic site, for a field trip about the fur trade, when suddenly classmates became witnesses.
We were on a bridge. It was like a fence bridge. So then we were walking, and then the bridge fell down, and then there were 3 people that got majorly injured, and then like 30 people fell.
We're not identifying the children involved, but hospital officials say most are now home, some after being treated for broken bones. One boy will stay overnight needing surgery for a fracture.
It could have been so much worse.
This couple was still shaken after learning their son wasn't hurt.
And I was just worried about all the kids. Just make sure all the kids are okay.
Investigators are now working to determine what caused the raised platform to fall and when was it last inspected.
This is a replica that was constructed in 1978, so not as old as you might think. This site hosts tens of thousands of visitors a year, including for the popular winter festival, Festival de Voyageurs, workplace health and safety. They've been here today. They're going to continue their investigation into how something like this happened. Me too.
All right, Melissa Ridgen in Winnipeg. Thanks, Melissa. Pressure is growing in Ottawa for David Johnston to step down as special rapporteur. The former Governor General ruled out holding a public inquiry into foreign election interference last week. While opposition leaders want him out, the decision rests with the Prime Minister. Taria Isri reports.
I declare the motion carried.
The vote may be symbolic, but the rebuke is real.
A majority of MPs have lost trust in former Governor General David Johnston. The House passed an NDP motion urging Johnston to step aside as special rapporteur and pressing the Prime Minister to call a public inquiry.
Prime Minister is not restoring confidence with the decisions he's taking. We need confidence restored.
When Johnston was first appointed, the New Democrats praised him.
I certainly trust him to do his work.
2 months later,
there's really no reason now to continue with Mr. Johnston.
The reversal comes after Johnston ruled out holding a public inquiry into foreign election interference. CSIS has informed at least 3 MPs that the Chinese government has allegedly targeted them. Trudeau is standing by the special rapporteur and his recommendation to hold public hearings instead.
It's understandable that political parties want to make partisan points on this, but the fact of the matter is David Johnston has served this country in extraordinary capacities for decades.
But opposition parties aren't convinced and think Trudeau should have called a public inquiry from the get-go.
The question is, what the hell is he trying to hide so much?
In his report, Johnston calls foreign interference a substantial danger and identifies major gaps in intelligence sharing. Political experts warn partisan bickering is distracting from the bigger issue, protecting Canadian democracy.
This shouldn't be about David Johnston or even about this report, frankly. And I think, again, we're tracing rabbit tracks as opposed to big game.
The vote in the House was non-binding, and in the end, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is the one who decides if Johnston can finish the work he started. Despite the backlash, the special rapporteur says he still wants the job. Taria Isri, Global News, Ottawa.
Canadian consumers are spending more in the face of recession fears as the economy rebounded in a big way during the first quarter of the year. Canada's economy grew at an annualized rate of 3.1% from January to March, beating Statistics Canada's forecast of 2.5%. The agency attributes the surprise surge to higher exports and household spending. However, housing investments slowed due to an increase in borrowing costs. The Bank of Canada's next interest rate decision is expected next week. A frightening commute for some Toronto transit riders. Coming up, fireworks causing chaos inside this bus.
It's not popping. It's not popping.
Toronto transit officials are investigating after disturbing video surfaced on social media showing fireworks being set off inside a crowded bus. People screamed and ducked for cover. There were no serious injuries. The Toronto Transit Commission is aware of a couple of recent incidents and says those responsible will be held accountable. When a wave of viruses infected Canadians last fall, children's pain and fever medication was scarce and families were scrambling. Some hospitals told parents cutting down adult medication could be a temporary solution. As Catherine Ward explains, a new report shows that had some problematic consequences.
We saw a real risk of harm to children related to the shortages.
It wasn't that long ago families were looking to win the lottery. The pain relief lottery for kids' medications.
Nothing is available.
At the time, organizations, including Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto, as well as the Ontario Poison Centre, offered alternatives. One included consulting healthcare professionals about how to cut down adult medication for children. Dr. E.L. Cohen from Sick Kids says the guidance was critically important.
If anything, probably reduced the risk that was happening to children and youth who were being administered adult medications at the time. At the very least, it provided safe guidance as to how to do it.
A new report indicates there was a noticeable jump last fall in the number of calls about dosing errors to Ontario Poison Centre, which also covers Manitoba and Nunavut.
Sometimes they were trying to use adult preparations, or that they were having friends bring product in from the United States that didn't have the same concentrations.
Dr. Jonathan Sapersky was on the team that crunched the numbers.
We found about a twofold increase in the number of calls to the Poison Centre, and that was when accounting for other factors that might have influenced those calls.
The good news is that we did not find an increase in the risk of hospitalization.
However, experts say it does reveal the need for strong supply chains.
It sheds light on the importance of producing some medications here, and not only producing medications at home, but also building in systems where we can increase production during times of need. We hope to not be in this situation again.
We reached out to Health Canada for an update on managing cold and flu medication supplies, but did not receive a response. Health Canada says on its webpage, ensuring that Canada's patients can get the medicines they need is a top priority. Catherine Ward, Global News, Toronto.
Health Canada is taking extraordinary new measures to warn people of the dangers of smoking. New labels will be printed directly on cigarettes. Canada is the first country in the world to take this approach. Experts hope the effort will help deter new smokers, encourage quitting, and reduce tobacco-related deaths. Unease in Ukraine ahead, the growing concerns over the safety of Europe's largest nuclear power plant. That is body cam video from a police officer in Georgia. He was investigating a highway crash when a car on the opposite side of the highway drove up the back of a tow truck, launched into the air, and flipped over. The driver amazingly survived, but their condition is not known. The U.S. has approved a new $300 million aid package for Ukraine. It includes weapons and munitions for drones. There are new fears over the safety of Europe's largest nuclear power plant, with reports Russia is moving in more military hardware. And today, again, troops pounded the Ukrainian capital. But there was also another strike inside Russia's borders. As Crystal Gumansing reports, it's unclear who's ordering all the attacks.
An oil refinery burning in southern Russia. Local officials say it was hit by a Ukrainian drone. An anti-Vladimir Putin group working in Ukraine, Freedom of Russia Legion, posted about the attack, but no one has claimed responsibility. A former CIA case officer and global affairs expert says there are many possibilities, including a Russian false flag operation or Ukraine testing the waters for a bigger strike. Either way, the Kremlin may benefit.
When civilian targets start getting bombed or blown up or damaged by drones, that scares people.
On Tuesday, an apartment block near Moscow was hit and 2 people injured. While strikes inside Russia are rare, Ukraine is pummeled regularly. This dashcam video shows debris from a Russian missile crashing onto a car Monday. In May alone, the capital endured 17 Russian air assaults, leading to praise from Western leaders.
This is due to this Ukrainian commitment and their ability to be strategic, smart, brave, and perfectly well organized.
What the streets will look like when the highly anticipated Ukraine counteroffensive begins, no one knows. But there are fears about the safety of Europe's largest nuclear power plant.
We are fortunate that a nuclear accident has not yet happened.
Rafael Grossi, speaking at the UN Security Council Tuesday, proposed 5 principles for the protection of the Zaporizhzhia power plant, including no attack on or from the plant and no heavy weapons such as multiple rocket launchers be housed there. So far, neither side has signed on. Crystal Gumansing, Global News, London.
All aboard. Next, an exclusive look at life on the South China Sea. Sailing over enormous stretches of water can be a challenge for anyone. That includes the Canadians on board HMCS Montreal. Global News has been granted exclusive access to a new military mission in the highly contentious South China Sea. It's far from the comforts of home and easy to miss family and friends. But there are powerful ways to stay connected and make healthy habits a priority. Here's Mackenzie Gray with a rare behind-the-scenes look at one sailor's life at sea.
It takes a team to pull off one of the toughest tasks on HMCS Montreal. An aircraft maintenance chief, Andre Crocker, is a key part of it. But when his day is done, he returns to his tiny room he shares with 5 others, and despite the tight quarters,
here in the top picture is my wife and I.
Crocker makes space for a small reminder of home.
This is the first time I've been away from them since they've been small. I've never deployed having kids.
That deployment on March 26th, a dreary day in Halifax. But Global News was there to see the ship off and to speak with the Crocker family.
Sad to see him go and know that he's not going to be there for such a big portion. It should be okay, I think.
It is going to feel weird though. We're used to having him more or less around.
It's a new experience for us as a family.
Sad to see him go.
Watching that back, an emotional moment.
Yeah, definitely good to see them, even though it's not live.
But what Crocker can't see, his daughter's cheerleading competitions he missed while at sea.
Luckily enough, we do have internet. I get some videos, but it's not the same as being there in person. Yeah.
We're up here on the boat deck, which used to be one of the only places you could get Wi-Fi, but just today they installed a new high-speed internet system, which will make FaceTimes and texts much easier for sailors on a 6-month deployment. Being away from family for that long is one of the many reasons the Navy has struggled to get fresh recruits, leading them to bring in a new program, offering new sailors a 1-year contract with no strings attached, well short of the usual 3-year agreement. And retention is also an issue.
Oh, then flew back to Halifax again.
But that's not the problem for Douglas Curry.
I'll be retiring soon after we get back, just because I can't do the things I want to do anymore.
Curry is the Montreal's coxswain. Think of him as the ship's principal.
I never expected, all those years ago to reach this rank and be in this position.
And what will he miss the most?
I'm going to really, really miss the great people that are on board and the great people that I've met over the last 32 years.
The Navy says they got over 200 applications for their new program, but that's just a small dent in the 16,000 new members the Canadian Armed Forces need. Mackenzie Gray, Global News, on board HMCS Montreal in the South China Sea.
And tomorrow, Mackenzie takes us to the sky for a special mission on one of the Montreal's most valuable assets, the Cyclone helicopter. And that is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Neetu Garcha. Today is World Otter Day, so we're showcasing the sea otters at the Vancouver Aquarium. Rescued as orphan pups and deemed unable to survive in the wild, they live now at the aquarium. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.